This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. We will call to order the Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee meeting of September 14th, 2021, beginning at 7 p.m. Present are committee members Broussard, Williamson, and Limpert. Council members Schuman, Heeman, Council President Jones, Council Member Kelly, Mayor Kennedy, Directors Kopfer, Lieber, and guests. I outlined Garreau as well. I'm sorry. We're going to discuss a couple of ordinances, but before we do that, we're going to talk about a few liquor permits. Feels like Groundhog Day all over again because another Public Safety Committee meeting, and we're talking about a liquor license for Lee's Seafood Boil. Nonetheless, this would be a new liquor permit number 0790591 issued to Lee's Seafood Boil. I take it back, this would be a transfer. Issued to Lee's Seafood Boil, North Olmsted LLC, DBA Lee's Seafood Boil, located at 23642 Lorraine Road, North Olmsted, Ohio 44070. This would be a transfer from Suet Chun Shek, which is DBA Fusing Restaurant, located at 25102 Brook Park Road, Suite 130, North Olmsted, Ohio 44070. There is no objection from the police department. Any questions or comments from committee? From council? Okay, seeing and hearing none. At this point, I'll make a motion to not object to liquor permit number 0790591, transferred from Suet Chun Shek to Lee's Seafood Boil, North Olmsted LLC, and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That'll pass 3-0. Next is, this is a new liquor permit application, permit number 00505510020. This would be issued to Adapt 2 LLC, which is DBA Scramblers, located at 26435 Great Northern Boulevard, North Olmsted, Ohio 44070. As with the last one, there is no objection from the police department. Any questions or comments from committee? From council? Seeing or hearing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion to not object to all of council to liquor permit number 00505510020 issued to Adapt 2 LLC, DBA Scramblers, and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All in favor say aye.
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 That'll pass 3-0. And then the last one on the docket for this evening is also a new liquor permit application, permit number 176-039-70025. This would be issued to Cost Plus Incorporated, which is DBA World Market, located at 26145 Great Northern Shopping Center, North Olmsted, Ohio 44070. No objection from the police. I don't have any questions or comments. Questions or comments from committee? From council?
Sure, I've got one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Limpert, please go ahead.
Yeah, so Scramblers is in the plaza, correct?
Correct.
You know how many other restaurants in the front plaza? I know obviously the are in that have liquor permits. I'm not familiar with how many entities now that we have in the strip mall there with liquor permits.
It's a good question. I don't have the answer to it, but the only one that I can conceivably see having the permit would be Applebee's all the way at the other end, but I'm not aware of any between Scramblers and Applebee's that might have a liquor permit.
Yeah, I'd be interested maybe following up with, I don't know if the police chief knows or how many we have in the mart, in the strip mall there. That would just be a question I have.
Got it. I'll make a note. Will that delay your voting on this?
I think we can move it forward to council, but I'd like to know before the vote.
Understood. Okay. I'll make a note to follow up and get back to you on that. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and make a motion to not object to all of council new liquor permit number 17603970025 to be issued to Cost Plus Incorporated DBA World Market. And I'll ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All in favor, say aye.
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 That'll pass 3-0. And now we will move into discussing a couple of ordinances. The first being ordinance 2021-57, which is an ordinance amending and reestablishing section 505.16 entitled Vicious and Dangerous Animals of Chapter 5 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Olmsted in order to adopt and follow state code procedures for determinations by the Animal Control Officer and to provide for judicial hearings of appeals and declaring an emergency. This was brought forth by Councilman Kelly, so I'm going to turn the floor over to him. Go ahead, Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just as that you just read, it allows for the animal control officer or a person designated by the mayor in his absence that can determine or designate a dog to be a nuisance, dangerous, or vicious dog. That can happen on the spot instead of there having to be a hearing to deem something dangerous or vicious. The dog can be taken into custody, and we can get help from the county on this also. But if there's an appeal to it, it's not going to come back to City Hall for the appeal. It's going to go to Rocky River Municipal Court, where the appeal would be heard by a judge. And then if there's a further hearing after that, that would also go in front of a judge. So it just takes it out of City Hall and puts it into a municipal court. And that's following the state code in that small section there.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, but I think the law director could probably expound on that a bit.
Mr. Grow, if you'd like to expand upon that, or if you think that Mr.
Sure.
Kelly is up to you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Kelly, Councilman Kelly has summarized that quite nicely in terms of what it does. It does clean up a little bit of what was taking place in some of the ambiguities in the prior section, and we've kind of tried to put some better definitions in to clean that up a little bit. The nuisance, vicious, and dangerous dog section, as the councilman explained, it gives a little more authority to the ACO to handle this issue on the ground more immediately. You still get all the protection rights that the state code provides, all the due process that you're required. The order can be issued by the ACO. If there is no appeal taken, it's a final order, and then we'll proceed with enforcing as we normally would. If an appeal is taken to the Court of Common Pleas, to the municipal court, then the burden's on the city to demonstrate that dog is a vicious, a nuisance, or a dangerous dog. I think because the definition's not there, if you'll indulge me for 1 minute, because some of you might be wondering what is the difference between a vicious, dangerous, and nuisance dog. So if I can, Mr. Chairman, because we incorporate a section from the revised code, maybe I could just tell you the differences while I'm sitting here, if that's okay. Okay. So under the revised code, a dangerous dog is a dog that without provocation has done any of the following. That's caused injury other than killing or serious injury to any person, or it's killed another dog, would be a dangerous dog. There's obviously some exceptions to that, police dogs and things like that. A nuisance dog is a dog without provocation while off premises of its owner, keeper, or harbor has chased or approached a person in either a menacing fashion or an apparent attitude of attack. So a nuisance dog is going to be a dog that's at large, that is creating a concern in the community, not by so much biting, but instilling the fear of an inevitable attack. So you've got a nuisance dog and a dangerous dog, and obviously the most significant one is the vicious dog. And under revised code, under 955.11, it's a dog that without provocation has killed or caused serious injury to any person. So that is the highest category that we'd be dealing with here. So he kind of runs the gamut. So it runs the gamut from the dog that's off leash, that's kind of terrorizing a neighborhood, but hasn't really bitten anyone or attacked any animals, to something that has bitten somebody or killed a dog, then to the highest category of a dog that is killed or caused serious injury to a person. So it kind of gives the ACO authority to work under all three categories of animal, and then take immediate possession if necessary, and make that determination on the spot. Advise the person of the right to take their appeal, and then it goes from there. So I just want to let you know a little bit about what those three definitions are in the categories, so you kind of have a better understanding that we're trying to, under Councilman Kelly's legislation, we're trying to give the animal control officer or the appropriate designee the full range of authority to deal with any animal that is an attitude of either killing another animal, seriously injuring a person, or even threatening to injure a person. So we didn't really have that flexibility before, but Councilman's suggestion was incorporated, and I think it's a better ordinance for it.
All right, thank you. I want to thank Mr. Kelly for bringing this forward. This is a excellent example of an ordinance that probably needed cleaning up. And unfortunately, there was an incident that kind of prompted that. But at any rate, thank you for that. Councilman, any other questions or comments for Mr. Kelly? Okay, Mr. Limpert?
Yeah, I had been approached by some recent subject matter experts, professional trainers on dogs, and one of them they brought up was about retractable leashes. And so this is a little bit different, but it's within the same set of ordinance that Mr. Kelly proposed. So I wanted to communicate this and see if obviously we could do it separate in a separate piece of legislation if people are opposed to it. But I know like Lakewood has banned the use of retractable leashes because they can extend out to a distance that really doesn't allow you to control the animal. And so in section 505.163A talks about own, keep, possess, harbor, maintain, or have in care and custody a control of the different types of dangerous breeds of dogs, and shall be strictly liable. So part A says be at large within the city unless securely attached upon a leash held in the hand of a person suitable age and size and manner. I was hoping that we could potentially amend that portion of the code to say upon a non-retractable leash. Mr. Garreau?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Please.
I think if we put it into that particular section, it really deals more specific, unless you're intending to, it really deals more specifically with the specific breeds of dogs that we're requiring to register, or additionally vicious nuisance dogs. Are you suggesting that perhaps we should give consideration to all dogs, or just a particular subset of dogs?
Yeah, I think we should consider all dogs, but given that this was just the vicious dog component, I thought that would be a reasonable first step, that given that we're talking about the ordinance today, that would be able to be amended within this new proposed code. And I think that might involve broader discussion and research than what I've done so far.
Yeah, there's another section about keeping your animal under control. We could probably, walking dogs on leashes and stuff like that, we could probably find somewhere else to park that as well. But certainly under 3A, you could include that if they're going to be, it's the will of the committee, if they're going to be walking the dog has to be on a leash that is not of a retractable nature, and that at least covers the specific category of dogs, and that it also covers vicious, dangerous, and nuisance dogs. So that's a good start, if that's the will of council.
So if I'm hearing everybody correctly, I'm thinking that we might want to consider this, but perhaps for a different ordinance or a different offering versus amending this particular one, since we don't have any experts on hand to talk to the merits of that. Really the question towards Mr. Limpert, and then we'll give Ms. Williamson a chance.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I thought that for this piece with the vicious dog animal component, I was comfortable proposing it here in this discussion. I think what I was referring to is if we wanted to expand it out to a broader set of all dogs, then that would probably involve some more conversation, I believe. But given the components of this ordinance and, you know, the ability to try to control the animal, and from other communities that have already banned such types of leashes, to me, it felt like something that would be, you know, a good amendment to the current legislation as we're trying to clean this up.
Mr. Kelly, and then Ms. Williamson, do you still have a question?
Yes,
We'll go
I
with
do.
Mr. Kelly, go ahead. Okay.
I seem to remember several years ago, there was talk about leashes and retractable leashes, and there was, and if I remember right, there was something about extending not more than 10 feet at the time. But I don't know if that ever passed, but that had been a discussion years ago. I think it was 10 or more years ago that had been brought up. That's all, thanks.
Ms. Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question would be, how many dog owners with these large dogs actually use retractable leashes? I mean, I have 3 large dogs and I wouldn't trust one of them on my large dog because I'm afraid they would snap. But my other question is, as far as the dangerous and nuisance or vicious dogs, how would that even be determined? And are we getting to a point where, you know, perhaps making this our ordinance non-breed specific? And I know that's something that I had suggested a while ago, to be able to identify vicious dogs in general, because we have a number of dogs in our community that may not be under this specific breed, but are in fact dangerous, vicious, or nuisance dogs.
Yeah, well, listen, it's Councilman Kelly's ordinance, so, you know, we can amend it however we see fit. I just want to take these
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think that's going to be a larger discussion for later, but I just kind of wanted to point that out to everyone. And perhaps that's something that we can again look to in the future once we get this, you know, rolling, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Mr. Kelly?
So the purpose of this bringing it forward was to change that section of it where if we had another incident like we had over on Clegg Road, that it would change the way that was done without being too convoluted as far as changing too many things in it. If amendments want to be made, that's fine. But I was kind of hoping we'd just get through by adding the state code part into what we already have. That would allow our ACO or a designee to be able to handle the situation in a better manner. Thank you.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, I'm inclined to lean towards that thinking, but Councilman Limpert, can we perhaps have a broader discussion with the law director regarding retractable leashes, and then figure out a way to approach that aspect after this evening? Or are you
Yeah, I mean, I think if that's the will of committee, and I think Ms. Williamson had some, perhaps the two of us could come together on the two different topics and have a broader discussion. I know we discussed the non-breed specific a couple of years ago. This was kind of the first time I was approached about the leashes, and then did some research and found these that already banned it or prevented those, and that was probably more broadly breeds. But, given the topic tonight, I thought it would be a good time to introduce it, what the temperature of council was. So I'm fine with that for a broader discussion.
Okay. Thank you on that. I appreciate that. And that's what I would like to propose then. Is the will of the committee. So, are there any other questions or comments from council? All right, seeing none. At this point, I'll make a motion to approve all of council ordinance 2021-57 as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That'll pass 3-0. Moving on to ordinance 2021-58, an ordinance to amend section 555.03 entitled Specific Prohibitions of Chapter 555 of the General Offenses Code, entitled Noise Control of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Olmsted for the purpose of modifying special regulations for specific activities occurring on Sundays, including but not limited to lawn mowing. This one was also brought forth by Councilman Kelly, so I'll turn the floor over to him again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what brought this about was there was a resident back in July or whenever we had, it seemed like rain every day for the month when everybody was having a hard time mowing their lawns. This individual was trying to cut his grass on a Sunday after 6 p.m. and I think a neighbor probably called and the police came over and told him he had to stop mowing his lawn when he finally had an opportunity with all the wet grass and everything to get it cut. So it seemed like possibly that 6 p.m. might be just a little too soon to cut off the ability to cut your lawn on a Sunday. And ironically, just 2 days ago, we have some friends that live over in Allendale, and at 9:50 a.m. on a Sunday, they were trying to cut up part of a tree that had fallen, and police came by at 9:50 a.m. and told them they had to stop cleaning up, but then the ordinance would allow them to, at 10 a.m., to go ahead and continue what they wanted to do. So just to make it easy and make everything consistent, we're talking with the law director. It was just, why don't we just make it across the board, make every day the same? Nobody has to wonder what time they're allowed to do anything or what time they have to quit. And so for being able to cut your grass or to clean up some yard debris, it would be from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and that would make it for 7 days a week. And if you read the ordinance on Saturdays, there's not even an end time the way it currently is. So it would also put an end time on Saturdays also for, and then we're getting into the season now where it's going to be getting dark early. And this really only has an effect about 4 months of the year, maybe, when people are trying to get their work done. So that was the reason it was brought forward. We sat down and talked with the law director about it, and I'm sure he could go ahead and explain, like he did last time, the reason we're doing this.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. I unmuted myself. Thank you.
I was trying to get my microphone to work too, so we're in the same place. Mr. Kelly described that accurately, and that was in working with him. The solution that we came up with was just to make it a uniform time for those particular activities. if you go through this code, there's times all over the place for different activities and who where you are and what you're doing. But the deficiency that Mr. Kelly spoke of is present. So the way it sets forth there, you do have a little more flexibility and a one uniform standard for 7 days a week. I'm not sure the origin of the different times. I know in my time on council, I know that was brought up and discussed, but it just creates a uniform time. So it's not just lawn mowing, but it's domestic power tools and things like that kind of stuff you might see a do-it-yourself or doing on a weekend, or frankly during the week. But on a weekend, 8 a.m. seems like a reasonable time if council agrees, and not after 9. So.
Thank you. And I just want to make sure I heard the times correctly. 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Is that accurate? Okay.
It's yeah. Exactly. It's you are the restriction is from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. the following day. So.
Got it. Okay. That covers it for my questions. Any questions from committee? From council, Ms. Heeman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is not relative to someone mowing their lawn, which sounds simple enough. But let's say your cousin's coming over, you're going to do the roof, you got the building department, that's all great. They're congregating at 6:30 in the driveway, drinking their coffee, getting their shingles together and everything else, but they're not doing the work. That's actually quite a loud process. And so is this ordinance going to be specifically law director for the yard maintenance only, or all activity? Because chainsaws, roofing, that sort of thing, kind of early on could be a little bit more obnoxious than somebody just going like, well, okay, the guy didn't get his lawn mowed, right?
Right.
So if you could help me understand that, please.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. The category it falls under is domestic power tools. So the way it reads is mechanically powered saw, drill, sander, grinder, lawn or garden tool, lawnmower, or other similar device used outdoors. And then it says other than snow removal equipment in residential areas. So yes, it would be any of the electronic type of devices or similar devices that I just mentioned would be under this amendment would be permitted between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. So yes, it doesn't limit itself to just landscaping and things of that nature. It goes beyond that.
Okay. Mr. Limpert, and then we'll go back to Ms. Heeman. I'm sorry.
Oh, you know what? I'll yield to Ms. Heeman first because I think she deserves to follow up. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Limpert. I appreciate it. So just a quick question. Is there any way to sort of get a report perhaps on the number of complaints that we've had over perhaps the past 2 years even? Because if it seems like a seasonal problem, Mr. Kelly, then maybe 2 years would be a good benchmark of what types of complaints we've gotten with regard to this ordinance. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Limpert.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Limpert.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. Yeah, and again, I'm in the kind of the thought of Ms. Heeman, so I'm glad she brought it up. There's a difference between lawn mowing at 9 a.m. or at 9 p.m. and chainsawing a tree down at 9 p.m. And so and I understand Mr. Grove's pointing, we're trying to make it uniform, but to me, there's a sort of a different process there for the yard and garden versus the power tools. And if anybody's had a neighbor that uses their garage for power tools extensively, if they're running those till 9 p.m. every Sunday night, I could see some frustrations and some complaints by residents that to me would be reasonable. If they have young kids and things like that need to get going. I understand that there's regular work days, weekdays, that's the time period, but that would only be my concern.
Mr. Kelly, any comments regarding the additional thought?
Well, I mean, we can check with the police departments and the building department probably and see what kind of complaints we've gotten about that. This was just trying to make it easy for our residents to have a consistent time to do things without everything being different like it is now. And if council wants to try to amend it to fit whatever they feel is proper, that's fine. We can discuss it.
Okay. Ms. Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually very comfortable with the way it's written now, with the way Mr. Kelly has made these amendments. I think that if we're going to try to start nitpicking, we also have to take into consideration that, you know, some of our residents don't work normal 9 to 5 Monday through Friday jobs. And if they're working different shifts, you know, sometimes they might only have a Sunday evening. And if it's, you know, if it's cutting it off at 9 o'clock, I think that, you know, that would be fine, in my opinion. I mean, we have to really take into consideration, though, other people's work schedules aren't necessarily normal. Thank you.
Good point. Ms. Heeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and based on, you know, Ms. Williamson's point, I'm really interested in the number of complaints and the types. The one time that I have gotten a complaint about that, it actually turned out that the lady didn't really care so much that they might have mowed their lawn at that time before. It was just that that particular day she was very ill, right? And of course the neighbor wouldn't know that, right? So it wasn't an issue with the time parameter so much of an issue of that day. It just wasn't great for her. But obviously, you know, we don't legislate for one person, so I'm interested in knowing what the complaint history has been with regard to noise and the types of complaints. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Limpert.
Yeah, and I agree with Ms. Heeman. I guess to just set some boundaries of what my thoughts are, you know, I agree with Mr. Kelly that the morning time should all be consistent and it aligns and it makes it easier for the residents, and we shouldn't be stopping somebody from starting their work. But I do think a cutoff for power tools at 8 p.m. is reasonable, and it's easier to tell people to stop for the night than you know, in the morning if they didn't know that it was different on Sunday. So that's my only thought. But you know, I'd be interested to see how many complaints there are related to this, and whether it's just kind of repeat offenders that are using, you know, power tools, or are they mostly just lawn complaints? Because I do put them in two different categories.
Okay. So I guess I'll pose the question to Mr. Kelly. Do you want to consider amending to make it a stop time of 8 p.m. or leave it at 9 until we get the additional information that a couple of council members are asking for as far as the number of complaints, and then we can hold it in committee and tackle it when we reconvene? I'll leave that up to you, Mr. Kelly, or at least get your guidance on that.
Mr. Chairman? Matt, can I jump in on something, just to point out something? I'm sitting here going through the code, Mr. Chairman, and there is a different section that deals with construction. And it deals with operating or permitting the operation of any tools or equipment used in construction, drilling, or demolition work. That might fit in as well. And of course, there's a whole different set of times for that. It talks about between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7:30 a.m. the following day. So it's even earlier. It's even earlier on weekdays, and then 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. on Sundays. And it talks about residential boundary lines. So there's probably some cleanup that needs to be done if you look at these other sections, because one section deals with construction, which means tools or equipment used in construction, and over here we have domestic power tools, which includes sanders, grinders, drills, and mechanically powered saws. I can't tell you what the difference between those two things would be, so maybe it's not a bad idea to take a look at section G and see if we can kind of harmonize that, because you're right, it wouldn't make a lot of sense, because we're dealing with power tools, two different sections, two different times, restrictions on Sunday, non-restrictions in another section. So it's probably not a bad idea. As you're mentioning it, I'm going through and looking at it, and I see that it's inconsistent.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. So I'll throw this back in the court of council members Limpert and Heeman. Is the current ordinance as it's written, as it relates to essentially lawn equipment, are we good with that so that we can tackle section G regarding the other types of power tools at a different time?
But
Go, Limpert.
I think there was some overlap there, is what the law director was saying, related to the heavy equipment tools. So I think we do need to kind of tackle them together.
I see.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I mean, you probably, to be honest with you, you probably could make section K strictly limited to lawn and garden tools, lawnmowers, or other similar devices, and then we can pick up the power equipment and power tools under construction. I mean, you could do that, but again, that's just something for you to consider to try to separate the two out. It's just a suggestion. I'm not suggesting you do it now while we're sitting here trying to figure that out, but it's just something to consider.
Mr. Kelly.
And I'm fine with doing what the law director just suggested, and that would be to separate the lawn and garden tools and give the residents a little bit more time to get their lawn done or whatever they need to do in the summertime, especially as wet as things get around here. So, yeah, I mean, I could go back if you want. If you want to do that, we can amend this to be lawn and garden tools. Would be fine with me. And then I'd be happy to go back when Mr. Groh has time and we can sit and try to figure out the other stuff.
Ms. Heeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really still would like to see the number of complaints and the type. I really don't want a resident thinking that they could call and make a complaint to a council person and then just have everything changed, right? And I've had several discussions with the law director about other similar issues, you know, that they weren't quick to want to jump on those. One resident's complaining about something that is citywide. So I really, while I think this sounds simple, I think we would be doing all of the rest of the residents a disservice if we did not consider how many people have been affected by this and or not, right? Before we jump into let's changing things. I have gotten complaints about trash cans, trash smell, trash can placement, any number of things, and you just don't jump in and say I'm changing this. Is my opinion, that we give it much more careful consideration and do everything at one time and or at least know the volume that we are considering changing for. Thank you.
Ms. Williamson?
Not sure if anyone's going to be able to answer this, but let's say, for instance, a complaint did come in and perhaps the resident was not ticketed. Mr. Kelly, would you know if that information was kept on file or if the police just kind of dismissed it with a warning? Do you know if that would be documented anywhere?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please, thank you.
There should be a log entry. Everything's the CAD system now. So if a police officer sent to a call, there should be a CAD entry on it, even if it doesn't warrant a report or any type of citation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I think I've heard a lot of opinions, and I think if I'm hearing everybody correctly, it sounds like we may need to hold this in committee to try and get the data that Ms. Heeman is asking for and just sort of try and better understand the overlap between this proposed ordinance and the other sections mentioned by Director Garreau in section G is just one example. Would you be opposed to holding it in committee, Mr. Kelly, until we figure that out? We can reschedule something for next week, as early as next week?
Not at all. Whatever you want to do is fine with me.
All right. Is that the will of the committee?
It is for, yes, Mr. Chair. For me, it is.
Okay, all right. So at this point, I'll make a motion to hold in committee ordinance 2021-58, pending some additional information. And if we can get that information between now and perhaps sometime next week, we can probably still tackle this in a fairly quickly amount of time so that it doesn't affect the fall leaf and lawn mowing season. Before I make that motion, Ms. Williamson, you have a comment?
Mr. Chair, is it possible that we can sort of reassure that none of our residents are going to be ticketed in the interim while we're waiting on this? I mean, is there a way that we can do that?
I honestly don't know.
Perhaps the law director can answer that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know, Mr. Chairman, how often this is happening. I mean, I don't. I mean, I've actually, to be honest with you, I've never even heard of somebody being cited about this or even approached, but you know, Mr. Kelly's pointed out at least a couple of examples. So I don't know whether there's a new awareness of this or whatnot. I know that I can't recall anybody being prosecuted over it. Not recently. So I suppose we can communicate, with the Division of Police and see the matter's under advisement right now and see what they want to do with it. Maybe Mr. Kelly's got his hand and maybe he has a different thought on that.
Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Oh, I agree. I don't know that there's been any citations written. I think probably people have just been told to stop because of the different times. I mean, I think the safety director is with us tonight, so maybe she could help us with this and talk to the police force about maybe not citing anybody. If they're going to warn them, that's fine. But I really don't know of any citations that have been written recently. It's just a lot of warrants.
I agree. It seems like the type of offense that would probably end up with a warning versus a citation. 99 times out of 100. That's just a guess on my part. Ms. Williamson?
But in the interim, Mr. Chair, since this is up for discussion with changing the times, I would even like to cease with the warning unless it's after the times that are proposed within the current legislation, if you will. Or I should say within the proposed legislation.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'll be happy to speak with Director Lieber and speak to the Division of Police on this topic in the interim. I can't decree that they won't enforce the law, but I think there's got to be an understanding as to how they're going to approach this while this is being given consideration. So I'll work with Director Lieber and the Chief of Police here to have a discussion about how they want to deal with that while this is being given consideration. It seems
and if
reasonable.
you could keep us, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
For the law director, if you would keep council informed as to how that's going to be handled, I'd appreciate it. I'm sure Mr. Kelly would as well. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, that went a lot longer than I had predicted. Mr. Limper, go ahead.
And I'm sorry to prolong it longer. I just wanted to say I appreciate Mr. Kelly's attempt to get things more consistent. I just had a couple concerns, but I definitely am glad that this is being proposed and look forward to kind of working through this and, getting it as more consistent as we can. So thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, so at this time, I'll make a motion to hold in committee ordinance 2021-58 and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That measure will pass 3-0, and we'll conclude our committee meeting at 7:44 p.m.